Our planet has been nurturing us for millennia. It can keep sustaining us, but its resources aren't limitless. We need to act now to protect the planet for future generations and make our societies climate resilient. The European Green Deal is the EU's commitment to be the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. It means radically transforming how we do things, reimagining urban landscapes by restoring ecosystems and giving space to nature. Finding greener ways to move around. Eating healthily while giving back to the planet. We have an opportunity and a responsibility to set Europe and the world on a more sustainable path. Research and innovation hold the solutions. Together, let's bring them to life.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much to all of you for joining us for today's session, part of the European Research and Innovation Days ASEAN 2021. My name is Susanne Ranzovasu, and I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Jenny Lind-Almaco, and both of us are the regional coordinators of the Euraxis Worldwide project here in Southeast Asia. Now, Euraxis is your gateway to the European research area. We are here to facilitate the collaboration between you and researchers in Europe. Now, you're joining us for the European Research and Innovation Days ASEAN 2021. This is our annual flagship event dedicated to you, the researchers. We want this to be a platform where you identify opportunities, where you can join forces with researchers in Europe and across the world to jointly work on some of the issues that are pressing to all of us. And as you know, our theme this year is climate change, innovation, and global health. We have, of course, focused on this issue because we all know this is what we need to work on together. And we just heard in this little video about the European Green Deal, the European Union's commitment to make Europe the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050. And of course, this is a huge endeavor that the Commission and the European member states have set for themselves. As we all know, all of this needs people to come up with ideas. We need clever people like yourselves to find innovative solutions to lots of these goals and ideas and challenges that we're faced with. How to create carbon neutrality, how to create clean energy, how to create sustainable industry, etc. And of course, what researchers need to do this is funding. So what we're talking about today is one of the key instruments that the Commission has in place, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, that support researchers in their endeavor to find ways and means for Europe and the world to achieve the goal of climate neutrality. We have invited two excellent speakers. We're very excited to hear from them. Our first speaker is Dr. Begoña Arano. She's the head of department at the Research Executive Agency at the European Commission. She will talk to us about the MSCA. What are the MSCA? How do they support researchers to research solutions for us to meet our climate targets? And we'll also hear from a second speaker, Dr. Alexandra Dubini. who is a practitioner, if you want. She's an MSCA fellow. She's a board member of the Marie Curie Alumni Association, and she is also a distinguished researcher at the University of Cordoba in Spain. We hope for this to be a very interactive session. So if you have any questions, just type them in the chat box. We have time, of course, for you to engage with our speakers and really ask them what you want to know. I think with this, I wish us all a super exciting session, and I'd like to hand over to our first speaker, Dr. Arame.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, and thank you very much both to you and Jenny for this invitation today. I must say that just seeing in the chat the hellos from everybody, it's just like, it feels like traveling through the world. It's fantastic to be in this meeting and have this opportunity to talk to so many people across the world. From what I can see. Yes, thank you as well for dedicating this session to MSCA and the opportunities that we can have within the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. I will be explaining today briefly what the opportunities are within MSCA. I will focus a little bit on how we are tackling the Green Deal, obviously not go in detail. I believe that we will hear some examples of MSCA projects later on, so then that would give an opportunity to see concrete examples. And I will also give an overview of the participation that we're having from ASEAN countries in our actions, just to show how many opportunities there are, because there are many. So if I can have the next slide, Suzanne. Basically, I wanted to show some of the key figures that we have had in MSCA within Horizon 2020. As you all know, it's the past program. We are now entering into the new framework program, which is Horizon Europe. So just to show briefly that during Horizon 2020, we have achieved great numbers in what we are aiming at, which is the training and the mobility of researchers of all times, of all moments in their career. So we have funded more than 65,000 researchers, including 25,000 PhD candidates. Researchers can come from outside the EU, and you can see that more than 37% of these researchers came from outside the EU. And during this 7-year period, we had 6.2 billion euros dedicated to MSCA. Now, we have been able to cover a whole array of doctoral programs in all areas of research, because our program is bottom-up, so we cover all areas of research, more than 1,000 doctoral programs. And then, very important as well, we have had a lot of focus on the business, cooperation with business, and we have supported more than 4,500 companies. This is very important because we consider that the experience that researchers can have, not just from the academia side, but also from the business side, is extremely important if we are talking about innovation. And I think you will all agree with me that in this, in the Green Deal, this is something which is extremely important. Innovation really plays a key role, as you've seen in the introductory video. And then one very important point that I left for the end, but is not least important, is the fact that we very much support the gender balance, and that we have the highest percentage of female researchers funded. It's interesting that today we are 4 women in this panel, and I'm very happy to see as well Alexandra being an MSCA fellow, and I believe as well that Jenny was in the past also a Marie Curie fellow. And I was a Marie Curie fellow as well. So that's almost a sign of these percentages being reached in real time. So maybe I could have the next slide, just to show you how MSCA will be in Horizon Europe. Very briefly, you can see the way that we have the 3 pillars in Horizon Europe, and Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions are within the excellent science pillar, together with the European Research Council and the research infrastructures. And maybe I can have the next slide, just to show, maybe you can put, just to show that what we had in Horizon 2020 has not changed dramatically in Horizon Europe. Maybe you can do the next part of the slide. That's perfect. So as you can see, what we were having in the past is covered by Horizon Europe in a very similar way. Not great changes, we just have improved wherever we could improve. But basically it stayed with the same type of actions. We have a network training for doctoral candidates. They are now the MSCA Doctoral Networks. We still have the individual fellowships, which are now called postdoctoral fellowships. I will go quickly through them afterwards, but you will see that there are very few changes. What was the action for research and non-research staff exchanges continue to figure in Horizon Europe as the MSCA staff exchanges. Co-fund stays, and what we had in terms of public outreach events, it's now called MSCN Citizens, but of course the European Researchers Night is part of this activity. So just stability, I think, is the main message that I want to pass with this. So maybe if I can have the next slide, I'll go quickly through what these actions offer. I will not go into a lot of detail because I don't want to use all my time that I have here for explaining in all the detail, but I leave the slides with you, and you will be able to also see in more detail. So basically, for the doctoral networks, what this is covering is the classical doctoral networks that we all know, but also there are 2 other strands within this, which are dedicated to the industrial doctorates, making emphasis on what I said earlier on, this important interface between academia and industry, and joint doctorates, which are joint degrees or multiple doctorate degrees, which are done in collaboration with different institutions, and that they ensure a joint selection and supervision. And of course, the main target is the researchers without a PhD who are engaged into a doctoral program. Now, this is obviously something very interesting for doctoral candidates. It's very important that ASEAN countries can participate as beneficiaries or as associated partners, and they can be part of a consortium. And then once the doctoral proposals are selected for funding, the project can recruit doctoral candidates, which can be from outside this network. And this is very important because, of course, ASEAN researchers are fully eligible. And here I want to use the opportunity to also thank EURACCESS, because obviously all the open vacancies are published in EURACCESS. So a plea for any of the people listening who might be interested in these actions to always go to the EURACCESS portal, because there are always opportunities there. And I wanted to add as well that it's not, this is, if you want, to program neutral, because the fact is that there are still open opportunities from Horizon 2020 projects which are still running and that are offering openings there. So any potential candidates interested in the doctoral networks, please go to the EURACCESS portal. So the next slide. These are the postdoctoral fellowships. If you want to, this is the flagship. This is how it all started in some ways, and it continues. It's just it's considered to be extremely important to give the opportunity for postdoctoral researchers to continue their research in other countries, which are not the ones where they have spent the latest time. There is an eligibility criterion in terms of mobility that you cannot have been in the same country for the last 12 months in the past 3 years. But that means that it gives the opportunity for researchers to have experiences outside normally their own country. So here we have the European postdoctoral fellowships. That's for researchers coming to Europe from any country in the world, and the global postdoctoral fellowships, which is for researchers from Europe to go outside the EU member states or any associated countries to Horizon Europe. So here again, the ASEAN partners can apply for global fellowships together with the main organizations. So for researchers who are in EU member state or associated country to go to an ASEAN country. And of course, postdoctoral researchers from ASEAN countries are eligible to come to Europe with a European postdoctoral fellowship. So again, that's another part which can be extremely interesting for researchers from ASEAN. And can I have the next slide, please? Yes, and this other scheme I think is extremely interesting as well for what we are talking about today is the opportunities for ASEAN countries, because if you want to, this is by design the activity which is aimed at the international cooperation or exchanges. It's basically with associated partners from outside the member states or associated countries, and ASEAN partners are fully eligible and can be part of the project consortia. Now, this is very interesting as well because it goes towards all types of staff who are contributing to research and innovation activities. So it can be, for example, administrative staff, managerial staff, technical staff. All this is considered very important to create these long-lasting networks and the exchanges that should happen amongst the different institutions. And it can happen at any career stage. Again, it can be doctoral candidates or postdoctoral researchers. The important thing is that there's an active engagement in research and innovation activities in the sending institution. And of course, very important when we're talking about staff exchanges, it's the focus that is already also placed on the exchanges, intersectoral exchanges with the academia and non-academia side. So maybe I can have the next slide. Here in CoFund, here I think it is important to signal especially that for these actions, which are normally is the co-funding to existing national regional schemes for doctoral training and postdoctoral fellowships, normally happening with institutions within Europe, but they have openings, and again, these are published in your access, and these are open to researchers of any nationality. They can apply the same as I was saying earlier on with the doctoral networks. They can be open to doctoral candidates or postdoctoral researchers who can come obviously from ASEAN. So again, opportunities here, and again, opportunities which are open throughout. So you can go to your access and find opportunities in the different projects that would be offering this. And then maybe I can have the next slide. This is just to complete the picture, not so interesting here today, but this is our outreach activities, which are focusing mostly on the fact that we want to make sure that the voice of researchers is better understood, and also to be able to have an opening to talk to the public. And I'm mindful as well that the colleagues from the MSCA are very good at that, and maybe Alexandra can explain a bit more about this, but there's a lot of engagement, and this is a very important part of what we want from the researchers. Maybe I can have the next slide. Here, no, it's the next one and the next one. Yeah. So I'm just going to focus a little bit on the Green Deal. What I want to explain is that, as I said earlier on, MSCA is a bottom-up program. So we cover everything. But when we start looking at how we are covering something which is very important, which is the European Green Deal, we wanted to just show how much we are contributing to this, because in total, what we've seen in Horizon 2020 is that already around 723 million euros have been dedicated to the Green Deal. So that represents a significant amount of the budget when you consider especially that we are covering all areas of research. So, I mean, we are very strongly contributing to these missions. And then I was asked by Jenny and Susan to present this because last July we did organize a cluster event on the Green Deal research. And this meant that we were able to sort of take a snapshot of what we had ongoing at that point. So we then looked at what we had running in Horizon in 2020, the projects that were running and that were relevant to the Green Deal. And we identified close to 500 projects, which represented more or less half of this budget that I was mentioning earlier on, about 300, a bit more than 300 million euros. And there you can see in these slides the distribution in the different projects. You can see that we had a lot of projects in individual fellowships covering this. But we also had a lot in the others as well, because of course, in terms of budget, they represent a training network represents a lot of budget. So it's a lot dedicated already to this. And maybe I can have I should say also, we supported in total more than 3,000 researchers, so it's quite a big number. And then what we did is we analyzed the thematic areas of these projects. So what we saw is that what we were covering, I mean, doesn't mean that this is a sign of how all the EU projects are covering, but it's important that in the case of MSCA being bottom up, we are covering these areas. There's a lot of focus on biodiversity, climate action, and renewable energy. This is what we saw from this snapshot that I was mentioning that we had. And what we saw is that more and more we were having also projects on forestry and sustainable agriculture. And I believe that we will see maybe afterwards some examples of projects which are precisely dealing with sustainability and food and sustainable agriculture. So that will give you a good idea of how these projects deal with it. The focuses depended on the type of actions. We saw that in the individual fellowships, for example, we were having more on environment, biodiversity, and sustainable agriculture. In the initial training networks, there were more on materials, engineering, pollution, whereas in RISE, again, we had more on environment and biodiversity. And then, of course, in CoFund, it was much more broader because, as I said, we are co-funding other existing programs, and then basically they covered most of the Green Deal areas. So as you can see, it's quite comprehensive what we are able to offer within MSCA regarding the Green Deal. I would like now to go maybe the next slide. Yeah, so what are we also doing in terms of the greening, the Green Deal for within MSCA? So what we have done is in April this year, in 2021, we put together DG EAC and the Research Executive Agency, together with the assistance of several external experts, we developed this MSCA Green Charter. And this basically it's a code of good practices to promote the sustainable implementation of MSCA. You are obviously aware that the main aspect of MSCA is the physical mobility, but obviously this charter is not compromising the physical mobility, but it proposes a number of principles that institutions and researchers who participate in MSCA can implement based on on a best effort basis. And you can see some of the principles, which I think just are very sound and it make quite a lot of sense and easy to understand, like reuse, reduce and recycle, to promote the green purchasing of project related materials, also for the travel, for the means of transport, and also, of course, develop awareness on environmental sustainability. And this is something that is underlying all our projects. And then can I have the next slide? So now I just want to give you an idea of how ASEAN has been participating in Horizon 2020 in MSCA. Very quickly, but just to show you that ASEAN has been actively participating, and obviously this is just a snapshot, and we hope that it can become even stronger in Horizon Europe. So you can see that basically all ASEAN countries, with the exception, I think it was of Brunei, have participated in these 7 years. When you look at the number of projects, Thailand is leading. Then when we look at the number of participations, that means when an organization from a concerned Asian country is participating in more than one project, there we see that Malaysia has and Thailand are more or less are basically at the same level, but you can see that the countries which have been quite active all around. But basically, if you want, in terms of activity, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam have been the most active in Horizon 2020. But of course, this is just this snapshot. And we hope that more will be, the participation will increase in Horizon Europe. Can I have the next slide? So again, now the researchers from Asian countries that are going to go elsewhere. So you see here the mobility of the ASEAN researchers. It's Vietnam who is leading, followed by Malaysia, Thailand, and then Indonesia. Again, it's the same 4 players, but again, in this case, Philippines is a bit stronger than Singapore. Here, these are the researchers that were recruited or were seconded in the MSCA projects. And what we see is that on the right-hand side, you see how they were participating in the different actions. And as you can see, of course, as I said earlier on, the strongest one by its own nature was RISE, this new staff exchanges in Horizon Europe, which is by its own nature, is very focused on international cooperation. But it's also very important to see that a large percentage were from the training networks. So you can see that there are a lot of opportunities for doctoral researchers, doctoral candidates to actually come to Europe through the ITNs. Can I have the next slide? And then what was the situation in terms of researchers coming to ASEAN countries? So you can see again here the distribution. Thailand seems in this case to be the most selected destination. And on the right-hand side, you can see the top 15 nationalities of researchers that were coming to the ASEAN countries. I'm not going to go through each of them, but you can see that in general, there were quite a lot of researchers, but especially United Kingdom and Germany were the ones that were sending. There were actually researchers from these countries going more to the ASEAN countries. I'm not showing here the distribution to which country they were all going. It's rather detailed, so I'm not going into that detail, but obviously that information is there. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so this is, no, I wanted to put this one. So this is from my side, the information about what MSCA can do for you, also enticing you to participate, because you can see that a lot of ASEAN researchers have participated, and this can only grow. And this, if you want more information, we give here a series of links for you to go to. And of course, it's last but not least, your access is there, even though I suppose many of you know this link very well. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much, Susanne, and thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arano, for this very comprehensive overview. And as we've seen, there are lots of opportunities offered by the MSCA for really researchers at every level of their career stage. So for people that are just thinking about obtaining a PhD, to those of you that are already part of an established research team and you would like to maybe join forces with researchers in Europe and in other countries through exchanges, through the staff exchange program that the MSCA offers as well. Now, there's lots of questions. And before we hand over to Alexandra, maybe just a couple of questions that I'd like to respond to immediately. First of all, yes, of course, we will share the slides and the recording with all of you after this session. And I know some of you have very specific questions about some of the programs that Dr. Arano has mentioned. Now, if I may just alert you that we will have a session on, let me just quickly look at the calendar. We'll have a session on the 17th, which is tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And in that session, we will also have someone who can advise you a little bit more on the application details. So some of you are thinking about drafting an application for some of the projects that were mentioned here. And then you'll have an opportunity to engage there. Dr. Arano, just there's a specific question. There's someone here joining from Penang and someone who's joining from the Philippines. So they have very specific proposals. The colleagues in Malaysia, for example, they're working on a digital health platform for patients to reduce face-to-face contact and traveling to the hospitals. The colleagues from Penang are interested in sustainable agriculture and forestry. Now, they're part of a research team here in ASEAN. Which action would you recommend that they probably look into for their purposes?
Okay, so I don't know, of course, the exact details of what they are working on and what they are offering. But if they already are part of an established team, then probably, and they are interested in having exchanges of researchers, for example, for doctoral candidates, then maybe one of the possibilities is to actually join through the doctoral networks in terms of being, partners to a network. That could be because they already have their own research team and they can offer training, but also this means that also their researchers could be also recruited into the other partners in the network. So that could be a good opportunity. And also with the staff exchanges, obviously that is not so, if you want to, long-term training as such for the researchers, but it gives a very good opportunity to exchange knowledge and to exchange staff, as I said, of all categories in the research career and in the institution, as long as they are involved in research and innovation. So I think that those might be, if you want to, easier ways to enter into these opportunities. But of course, if they want to receive postdoctoral researchers with the global fellowships, they could join forces to be the institution that receives the global researcher. That's another possibility as well that they could go for. I think that maybe if what they want is to create more kind of networking effect, more long-term, maybe it's possible better to get into one of these networks, staff exchanges or the doctoral networks.
Thank you so much. Yes, and just to alert all of you, we have a specific session on the staff exchanges call, which is this Thursday at 4 o'clock. The call is currently open, so this is really the most opportune time for you to link in to this session, find out about the application procedure, and then hopefully submit a proposal. The deadline, if I'm not mistaken, is sometime in February, so there is still time really to reach out. And again, in the chat, there's lots and lots of offers of people that want to join forces with each other. We will, of course, Jenny and I, make sure that you are put in touch with each other, and we'll make sure that you have all the information. So thank you so much, Dr. Arano. Please stay with us for now. And I'd now like to invite Alexandra Dubini to share her presentation with us. Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to talk about scientific leadership for a sustainable future. I think those themes are very important because science and sustainability are not always good friends, I would say. We know that, for example, scientific career path is not famous to be sustainable. We also have sometimes laboratory environments, or we design experiments that are not sustainable. So those themes are very important. The good news is that we have many projects that are dedicated to this theme, many research projects that are willing to fight climate change and are dedicated to really work towards sustainability. So in this COVID world, I would say that we owe to carry on thinking about how to decrease our impact, our personal impact on the planet, and how we can ferment the impact of science in society. So I want really to advocate that us as scientists, we need to advocate for our skills. We need to show that we are engaged and committed to serve society, and that we will do that with the means that we are given. So I want to invite you a little bit in my scientific journey, how I ended up working with renewable energies, and how we can work and implement the Green Deal. So first of all, I started my career 20 years ago because in 2001, I decided to do my PhD and work on hydrogen production from microorganisms. And at the time, my supervisor told me that we could use hydrogen as a fuel in cars in the future. I must say that I was not very aware of the urgency of climate change, but I thought that working towards an alternative fuel to replace fossil fuel would be a great idea. And that, of course, hydrogen is a clean energy. It doesn't contaminate because it does not release CO2 in the atmosphere. So why not? And I happily graduated with a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry. But from there, I wasn't sure what to do next. No, I thought, shall I go back to France, my country of origin? So I was in the UK. Shall I go to the US to gain further training? At the time, the US was considered as one of the best places to do cutting edge science. And then I decided to join the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which is one of the 17 national labs funded by the Department of Energy in the US, in Colorado. And it has one particularity, is that it's entirely dedicated to renewable energy. And actually, it's famous because it develops standards in the area of solar panel, smart grid, wind energy, and of course, I was working on hydrogen production from green algae. So there, I learned a lot. And 2 years after that, I was able to write a project that was funded by the DOE, and I was hired as a permanent scientist there. So the cycle of a life scientist started for me, running after grants, hiring people, building my own team, trying to write papers and start over. And this is very overwhelming when you are a young scientist. And even when you are not that young, it's still a lot of work. But I had a great support around. All my colleagues were there, and I had great mentors. So that was very important to me. And I think it's what scientists need to cultivate along their career. to be more sustainable, I guess. And from that, I learned a lot. And of course, I was able to have a lot of opportunities, and I worked with private companies, Shell Petroleum Company. I worked with NASA. And I had this great experience where this institution was at the great interface between fundamental research and application. And so I think that's what we need, and that's what we need, especially in our times. And with the Green Deal, I think the Green Deal is giving us the tool to really develop great science. However, of course, along the years, I learned a lot about scientific culture, different labs in different countries, and I lost many of my colleagues, many of women scientists, because we don't have enough permanent position. No? So I think we really need to step up as a scientist and fight for a research ecosystem that is sustainable. We need a government commitment. We need the help of funding agencies and political organizations to realize that really we need effort fundings to support permanent position, but also long-term projects. 2 years is great to start science, but it's not enough. We need 5 years, maybe 10 years projects long, and we need to advocate for that. So I must say that after 10 years in the US, so going back to my personal experience, I decided that I wanted to go back to Europe. And I wrote a project to work in France, and got elected for a Marie Curie cofund, which helped me really go back to get in touch with European research landscape, and develop a network, gain new skills, learn new techniques. So that was my first step there. Of course, as life would have it, my husband got a tenure track position in Spain, so I decided that I need to move to Spain. And there again, I wrote a project and got another Marie cofund fellowship, which allowed me to move to the University of Córdoba. So the Marie Curie program was very essential for my return in the US and settle down there. I really developed a network that helped me decided how and where to go to fit my ambitions and my career's goals. And the Marie Curie Actions in general are training excellent scientists. So we need you guys from Asia to be applying, of course. And we need manpower in Europe for sure. And we need new ideas, fresh new ideas. So please apply. But of course, once you are done, it's always the same question, what do you do? So in my case, I applied to a European ERANET call, and I was awarded with this project, which was I was the PI and coordinator of a project with 5 partners. And that helped me really secure my research within the university. So now I'm a distinguished researcher. Of course, I'm still working on hydrogen production from green algae, but I expanded my research. So now I work with wastewater bioremediation using algae and bacteria. We use the biomass that we obtain for biofertilizers. And so this is my own contribution to help us transition to a more eco-friendly society, to get a greener society, I would say, but we all need to do that. in our own ways. And if it's not through your projects, you should also contribute to develop guideline protocols to work in an eco-friendly environments, such as the MSCA Green Charter. You need to advocate to use green resources, I would say, for your projects, project design, project laboratory environment. And we need to remember that really science is a great tool and is the best tool, I would say, to develop a better world. No? So I would encourage everyone to advocate for his skills for science in general, and then especially with what we've seen with the COP26 and all the negotiation happening. We need scientists on the table. We need to be listened to and share our experience and share our views and vision for a better world. So from there, I will go back to your access. And I just wanted to say to all of you, please be resilient. Science is not easy. A scientific career is not easy, but it's worthy. And we need to push forward, and we need to carry on in that direction if we want to fight climate change. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alexandra, for a very inspiring talk. And I think that was a great message. The message really is we need you, we need the researchers. The Commission's goal of being climate neutral by 2050 is not achievable without the researchers coming up with the solutions to the challenges that are on the table. So I think that's great. And we've heard there are really so many opportunities that the MSCA offer to help researchers, do that, to advance their career, to really play their role, and to do what they are, like you, Alexandra, clearly very passionate about. So I think that was a very inspiring talk. Now, we received lots and lots of questions in the chat. I'm not sure whether you're following it, but there's clearly a super interest in people to really make use of the MSCA. So there's a lot of questions about the modalities of application. People want to link up. Maybe, Alexandra, to you. You're doing research in the field of green technologies, climate change in Europe. What would you be interested in what's happening in ASEAN? What do you think could ASEAN researchers bring to the table when it comes to the particular kind of research that we're talking about?
I think they come with a different way of thinking about research. They definitely have different ways of designing experiments, and I've seen that in all the labs I've been. All cultures are different, and so we all think about the same thing in a different way. So it's good to always share our vision, and definitely we need to have this new perspective. What's going on in Asia, especially with climate change, is different from what's happening in Europe or the rest of the world. So, of course, we need different solutions and different projects adapted to that. So I think that's what I see. I see the complementary of how we envision science and how we can design science together.
Thank you so much. I think that's exactly it. There's different puzzle pieces that come together to bring the solution. And I think to use this metaphor, the MSCA is kind of the link that brings these different puzzle pieces together. Thank you so much, both of you. We have to close this session pretty soon because we will be moving to the next session. And in the next session, you have the opportunity to meet some of the researchers and research groups that are funded by the MSCA to really support research in how to make Europe and the world climate neutral. So we invite you all to join us for the next session. I'm sharing here just very briefly with you. This is the QR code. If you just use your handphone right now, this will lead you to the entire event schedule that we have planned for you. And there's very easy links for you to join us for the next sessions. a lot of you are interested in finding out about how to apply for these MSCA opportunities that we've been introduced, the postdoc fellowships, the PhD training networks, the staff exchange program. Please do all join us tomorrow at 4 o'clock for a dedicated session where we will be expanding on this particular opportunity, and we will have people at hand to advise you on the modalities. And as we've heard, Euraxis is here. Jenny and I are in Southeast Asia. We are your interlocutors. You can always reach out to us at ASEAN@euraxis.net for questions and support. And just to remind you again, we will be sharing all the slides and the recording. And we will also find a way to make sure that those of you that have indicated their interest in being connected with each other can do so. With this, I think I'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Arano, Dr. Dubini. Thank you so much for this fabulous session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And just this is not over. We're just moving to the next session. Please join us for as many sessions as you can, and we will be in touch in the next few days with follow-up information to make sure that you too can benefit from the opportunities that we've presented. And with this, thank you so much, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much as well.
Thank you.
Goodbye.